So what does it mean to assess the situational aspects in a negotiation? Okay, well, that can best be described as understanding the overall context that characterize the nature or what will make up the constraints, the aspects of whatever negotiation you're undertaking. Now, we've talked about negotiation strategy and it being made up of orientation, objectives, and tactics. Tactics are what you use to achieve the objectives. Objectives seek to affect the other party or the context of the negotiation. Okay, and then orientation being your basic disposition or attitude towards the negotiation and ultimately influencing what objectives you pursue and the tactics that you employ and how you employ them. Okay, now before you can do any of that, you need to have a certain bit of information before you can go through the process of developing a strategy or planning a strategy, right? So that being said, you're going to need to assess yourself, you're going to need to assess the counterparty, you're going to need to assess the social context, and you're going to need to assess the situational aspects of the negotiation. And that's what we're talking about here. How do you assess the situational aspects of the negotiation? Or what are the things you should assess? Well, all of these situational aspects are going to change. They're very subjective based upon the party in the negotiation and the nature of the negotiation itself. So first off, understand the interests at play, right? Now, I know this matters mostly to you and to the other party. When you assess yourself and the other party, identifying the interest is part of that, right? But that being said, still having a holistic view of all the interests at play together will affect the context of the negotiation. Sometimes two parties don't believe that they're negotiating over the same thing, right? Or that everything that is at play in the negotiation is at play, right? So understanding that. The nature of the negotiation, what are the interests that you're negotiating over? What is the dispute? What are the positions that you're negotiating over, right? So understand, is it a dispute? Is it a transaction? Is it a position you want to arrive at? Right, or a course of action that you're negotiating. So what is the nature of those interests? All right. Then timing. Are there any timing constraints on the negotiation? Does it have to happen in some sequence or within a given period of time? All right. Geographically, where are you located? Where's the other party located? Where are the interests at stake located in the negotiation? So anything that relates to positioning or geography, right? Understanding that. Communication methods. How are you going to be communicating? Is this an in-person negotiation? Is it going to happen in person over multiple sequences? Is some of it going to happen virtually via some web conferencing software? Is it going to be asynchronously virtual where you're going to have recorded messages sent to each other, either video messages or voice messages? Are you going to be asynchronous in terms of you send out your term sheet to the other side, they read it and send you back a response via email? That type of thing, right? Is it going to be, what methods are you going to use to communicate? All right. Stages or sequences of the negotiation. What order will those take place in? What will be the characteristics of each stage or sequence of the negotiation? Are there different approval authorities at each stage? Or does everybody involved at every different point have a different interest, or do the interests change at different stages of the negotiation? Okay. Power dynamics. Does one party have some position, some level of knowledge, some level of expertise? We'll talk about different sources of power in a negotiation in a separate video, but what is the power dynamic between the parties, right? Is it boss-subordinate? Is it two equal competitors? Is it between people who have some working relationship or familial relationship with each other? That type of thing, okay? Culture. Culture affects the negotiation process because it affects how we communicate. Everything from the words we choose, the deference we show to other individuals, whether we look people in the eye, whether you prefer to negotiate in person or electronically, whether you prefer it to be at the moment or asynchronous, right? So there are many cultural aspects that come into play in the negotiation. We have a whole video series on how culture affects the negotiation process. Resources at play. what resources do you have to call down to make the situation happen, right? If it's a business deal, do you have legal and accounting at your disposal like that will have a agreement put together in a day, right? Do you have experts who you can confer on? Do you have the information necessary to arrive at some calculation? Do you have, what resources are at play as part of the negotiation, right? More than just what you're negotiating over, all the secondary resources that might be necessary or aid the negotiation process in being carried out or brought to fruition. Okay, is the negotiation public or private? Is it known by others? Is it between parties? Is it part of disclosure as part of a public company? How is the information disseminated, right? That type of thing. It can affect the assessment process royally, okay? Because based upon the amount of information you're able to glean and the amount of information that you can assume that the other party has. So all of these things taken together are various aspects of the situation that will affect how you understand the negotiation to take place, what will influence it, what are constraints upon it in that way. So that's the aspect of all of these are just examples, but they're primary considerations and things that we'll address in these video series on the different situational aspects affecting a negotiation.